Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Janelle. If you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and click that button. I'm here to give you guys an update on CCCA, alopecia areata, and a new topic, rheumatoid arthritis. So as a backstory, if you're new to my channel, I was diagnosed with CCCA in May of 2019. The backstory on that was a lot of stress around December 2018. I was out with an injury to my back, wasn't able to work, was kind of worried about a lot of things kind of unnecessarily. About like 3 months later in March, I started feeling some itching, burning in the center of my scalp. I ended up a dermatologist and was diagnosed with CCCA by May of 2019. I went through a round of maybe 4 to 5 injections of steroids in the center. My hair ended up growing back, thankfully. Towards the end of 2019, in December, I started finding some additional areas in the back where the part was widening and I knew something wasn't right. I ended up going back to my dermatologist and found out that I had alopecia areata. That had no symptoms. That was more or less, styling my hair and noticing that the part was wider than it should have been. So fast forward, I ended up getting injections for that area as well. And I decided to completely overhaul my diet. So I stopped eating meat. By like January 2020, I stopped eating meat altogether. Knowing that both of these hair scalp conditions were autoimmune in some way, and eating processed foods, meat increases inflammatory markers. So my goal was to get my body in the healthiest state possible and see if that could help my hair. And I kind of just didn't worry about my hair anymore. I did upload a video where I saw a trichologist who kind of differed in kind of saying that I didn't really have CCCA. And this is typical, you're Black, you're female, you have crown hair loss, CCCA, you kind of get put in a box. It's still kind of touch and go whether or not that was the case, but I'm going to go ahead and say I was treated for it. The treatment worked, and I have now moved on from that. I do find it helpful going to a trichologist and just getting evaluated. It's really a second opinion. It is out of pocket. I'll go ahead and link that video in here. So as I mentioned, I had stopped eating meat for about a year. So January 2020 to about, I'm getting a call. January 2020 to November 2020, I had stopped eating meat. So right before Thanksgiving, I had decided, I'm Jamaican, my mom's coming into town. I haven't had oxtail, curry goat, all of this stuff in however long. So I started kind of weaning myself back into eating meat. So I started with white meat, so like organic chicken, didn't have any issues. Thanksgiving came, I ended up overindulging, as I said, curry goat, oxtail, pork, anything that I hadn't had in so long was it. I ate it all. 2 weeks after that, I started feeling joint pain, stiffness in my hands. Didn't really think anything of it. But then the pain became progressively worse. So right now I'm working as a nurse, putting lines in, IVs and such. And just putting my gloves on and off, I started feeling a lot of pain in the MCP joint. So it's the joint on your index finger where you would make your knuckle. So both joints, I started feeling pain. I'm also in NP school, so I am aware of other processes and automatically thought RA because it was bilateral, meaning both sides, and symmetrical, where it's the same joint on both sides. But I kind of said, I'll just let my doctor know. I had a physical coming up, didn't really think anything of it, and just said I'll bring it up to her. So basically, my appointment was a couple days after Christmas. I went, got my physical done, chit-chatted with my doctor, kind of just brought it up in passing, like, hey, my hands are hurting, not really sure what's going on. She also thought along the same path and decided to do a rheumatological workup. What that entails is checking a rheumatoid factor, an anti-CCP, ESR, ANA, CMP, CBC, vitamin D. To break down what these things are, a rheumatoid factor and a CCP are always checked if you're suspecting RA or rheumatoid arthritis. An ESR is a guide for inflammation. Now, it's not very specific, so it doesn't tell you where you have inflammation, but clinically we already knew where because I felt it in my hands. But an ESR can be elevated even in healthy people. So it's not a true diagnostic marker for any inflammatory disorder. We checked an ANA, which rules out lupus. Lupus also has a rheumatoid component where you can have joint pain, so we wanted to make sure that that wasn't the case. A CMP, or a complete metabolic panel, is where you check your kidneys, your electrolytes, your liver function. The CBC is a complete blood count, which checks for anemia or any sort of liver issues as far as clotting disorders. And then we went ahead and checked a vitamin D, which a lot of research has linked vitamin D and autoimmune diseases together. However, they also don't recommend checking it, which I still don't understand. And as a provider, I will be checking it at least annually. Most people are deficient. Most people are low. Even if you're taking a multivitamin, it might not be enough. But some people, they have found that treating low vitamin D can help other things such as depression or, as I said, autoimmune disorders and the symptoms of that. So moving on, New Year's Eve, all my results came in. My PCP confirmed rheumatoid arthritis. So my rheumatoid factor was through the roof, like 6 times the normal. It was over 630. My CCP was also elevated. What else did we check? So the ANA was negative. The ESR was elevated, showing inflammation. My levels were about 33. I forgot what the cutoff was. And my vitamin D was very low. It was 13. It should be above 30. So we went ahead and started treating my vitamin D and an immediate referral to a rheumatology. So again, this was New Year's Eve, so the rheumatology office was already closed. By that Monday, I was able to call and I got an appointment within a couple of days. I think I saw the rheumatologist by the 4th. I had my COVID vaccine scheduled for like the 3rd, I want to say, and I had to end up moving that to like the 6th. Saw my rheumatologist. What ended up coming about with that is my levels were so elevated, and with my levels being that high, but only 2 joints at the time being affected, the rheumatologist decided that this is more indicative of a more aggressive RA, so we would have to treat it aggressively, and that is what we did. So I ended up on high-dose steroids, prednisone, for about a month, tapering down each week. We started methotrexate, which is a once-weekly medication for RA, and we up-titrated that every 2 weeks as we were coming down on the prednisone, so we were controlling the inflammation and then going up on the medication. Methotrexate is considered a DMARD, or a disease-modifying rheumatological drug, so it prevents joint breakdown and just any inflammation within the space. It's also an immunosuppressant, so I'm more at risk per se for getting sick, but it's not that suppressive as prednisone. So right now, that's what we're doing. I ended up not being able to get my COVID vaccine because I'm not on a stable dose of methotrexate, and also taking an immunosuppressant and getting a vaccine. Not to say that it defeats the purpose, but it does diminish the effectiveness of the vaccine. So I'd rather just wait until my condition is stable. So risk factors for me and RA, one, we already knew that my scalp was an autoimmune condition. I do not have a family history of RA. No one in my family has it. Arthritis, yes, which everyone can sort of get with old age. But really no sort of risk factors. A couple of theories being thrown around. About a month before Thanksgiving, I got my flu vaccine. I never usually have I wouldn't even say usually, I've never had a reaction to a vaccine. I got my flu vaccine about 2 weeks later, which the flu vaccine takes about 2 weeks to work anyways. 2 weeks later, I got a sore throat really bad, had to miss work, thought I had COVID or something, got swabbed, it was negative. I had a sore throat for about 3 days. And I had to end up taking ibuprofen just to get that to go away. And that was unusual. So that was a moderate response, if not severe, to the vaccine. And then that was in October. November came around. So was it the fact that I started eating meat again? Was it the fact that this vaccine possibly triggered an immune response, a hyperimmune response, where I ended up being predisposed to RA from having another autoimmune disorder? There are so many things that could have caused this. That is really just hard to tell. So at this point, I'm just focused on doing the things that I know that I can do. Decrease stress, weight loss, just to keep pressure off of my joints. I went back to being I won't say vegan, more so pescatarian. It's very hard to get protein in when you're vegetarian, and I don't eat that much. I'm also intermittent fasting, so in between that time, the only way for me to get my protein in is either protein powders, which gross, or eating seafood, which I love. So I'm not eating any meat or poultry, but I am eating seafood. I am intermittent fasting. I'm meditating. I'm working out. I am keeping my space calm. I